Yeah, well, your mommy's such a floozy, she probably #shouted her abortion.
Oh, yeah? Well, your dad's such a transy that he should probably work for Fox.
Hold on now, wait a minute. Now, don't bring nobody's transgender father into this. Z ain't here. Now remember, if it weren't for your transgender father, you wouldn't be here. So, remember kids, if you make fun of one tranny, you're making fun of all trannies all around the world.
Treat you right, treat father, mother right. Treat you right, treat you right. Treat you right, treat father, mother right. Treat you right, treat you right.
Father, mother, there is no other. Like father, mother, so treat Z
You get it? That's the joke.
Father, mother, there is no other.
That's the joke. It's fucking hysterical, right?
Treat Z right. Father, mother, I'll always love her. My father, mother, so treat Z right, treat Z right. T is for the transition father, mother did, making me proud, I'm his or her kid. R is for respect, you better show the miss. It don't matter a lick, she used to have a...
You're so stupid.
I received quite a bit of criticism from my last video in which I criticized Steven Crowder and called him a lying, unfunny bigot. Now, all of those things are undeniably true. I will concede to the fact that I did not really support any of my assertions with so-called evidence. Now, plenty of people have shown time and time again examples of Steven Crowder stretching the truth to flat-out lying, and I really have no interest in doing that. Instead, I would like to do something a little bit more abstract, a little bit more philosophical. The question of whether or not Steven Crowder is funny. The answer is no, he's not. So, part 1. Now, I don't consider myself a comedian. I've dabbled in stand-up, but I'm much too big of a pussy to ever get on a stage. So while I am not a comedian, I do, however, know one or two things about comedy. And one of those things is a simple and concise utterance that I have yet to ever see disproven. Right-wingers cannot be funny. It is impossible for them to be funny. Steven Crowder calls himself a right-wing comedian, but to anyone with even a semblance of common sense, those two things are fundamentally incompatible. There's a multitude of reasons for this, but one of the most obvious ones comes from the fact that comedy, at its most fundamental level, is derived from the subversion of expectations. And no offense, but a rich white guy in a t-shirt that's way too tight talking about how gay people are icky just doesn't subvert anyone's expectations. Crowder is the literal embodiment of that guy you went to high school with who would yell racial slurs at you as he drove through a puddle of rainwater to get you all wet before class. He's a douchebag and a bully. And if there's anything I know about bullies, it's that every single one of them is nothing more than an insecure little child, desperate for any feeling of acceptance and power. And the easiest way to feel as if you have power is to demonstrate it by attacking and vilifying already powerless and marginalized others. These are the quality jokes that are on Louder with Crowder. Really cutting edge material there. Hell fucking yeah, dude. People who are not afforded the social capital required to stand up to you. Gay people, trans people, immigrants, people of color. The people who go through more abuse in a single week than you or I would in probably a year. During the research for this video, I kept an Excel spreadsheet and I logged every single topic of every single one of his so-called jokes. And the results are the furthest thing from surprising you can imagine. 95% of his content is dedicated to shitting on some sort of already marginalized minority. This was to be expected though, you know, normal, par for the course. What was more interesting, however, was the number of times he made a self-deprecating joke or comment. Yeah, 0 times, not once. That's impressively arrogant, while at the same time being impressively insecure. Even his co-hosts refused to throw so much as a light jab at him. But then again, they're all probably scared shitless because the last time a co-host made a joke about Steven, they literally disappeared and were never seen or talked about on the show again. So maybe there's something to that. What that tells me is that Crowder is compensating for an incredibly deep and powerful insecurity, one that has been eating him alive for years upon years until all that was left was a homophobic sack of whey protein and toxic masculinity that chases down scotch with an inner tear to try and convince themselves that they wouldn't enjoy a daiquiri more. When your entire routine is based on punching down at people who have incredibly difficult lives already, while you're some rich white guy who has a shitty internet talk show, it doesn't paint you in a good light. It makes you look like an insecure fucking asshole. Part 2. There's a sort of unspoken agreement between the comedian and the audience that is crucial to an act that relies on edgy or dark material. Basically, everybody needs to be in agreement that they are currently watching a comedian deliver jokes, and that these jokes are not actual beliefs or opinions that the comedian genuinely holds. They are just absurd and out loud examples of the dark thoughts that we all have from time to time. If it's just a joke, and it's a funny joke, really anything can be poked fun at. But it takes poise and talent, something Crowder is noticeably deficient in. A good example of this is a bit by Louis C.K.
I'm not condoning rape, obviously. You should never rape anyone. Unless you have a reason, like you want to fuck somebody and they won't let you, in which case, what other option do you have? How else are you supposed to have an orgasm in their body if you don't rape them? I mean, what the fuck?
So here we have an example of a comedian making a very taboo, a very dark joke about a very sensitive subject, and he gets away with it, everyone laughs, and it's because the joke is funny. But these days, in light of some of Louis' misconduct, that joke isn't very funny anymore. Because while I don't actually think Louis C.K. believes what he's saying in that joke, I also don't know that he doesn't. And that uncertainty is what strips it of its humor and makes it simply uncomfortable. And this is where you run into a problem with right-wingers. Because if a right-winger makes a joke like that, it's not very clear whether or not they actually believe it. I don't think it's too big of a stretch to say that right-wingers typically hold very regressive and reactionary views towards things like feminism, trans rights, gay rights, etc. They are not known for their easygoing and lighthearted personalities. So when Steven Crowder makes a gay joke, he may try and say that was just a joke, that he didn't mean it, but the fact remains that he does, to a certain extent, believe in what he is saying.
That's a crime shame.
Yeah, keep going.
Switching back to entertainment. No, some will be interesting. No, listen, different strokes.
Nice, man. Fuck yeah.
Guns N' Roses basic stuff. McKagan. Are you a Guns N' Roses fan there?
Yes.
Are you really?
More Pantera, but it's fine.
Oh, okay.
November Rain was great.
Oh, wow. I'm just surprised
Guns
that
N'
my
Roses.
lawyer likes Pantera. Honestly, that's...
Transparency, we can't figure out what rules he did or didn't break. By the way, it seems clear that he did break these rules. You started off with an apology to the
wrong.
LGBT and that you think YouTube made the right call.
Olivia's Wojcicki is she's forced to defend herself against a trans male to female, both beautiful and brave.
Yeah, right.
But beautiful and brave, but you didn't even bother to put on makeup. I mean, there's barely
It's not a lot of
passables
effort
as a
going
term in
on
the
here.
transgender community. Barely passables. You're barely trying.
Part 3. Complacency can never be funny. Being on the right wing means that you've resigned yourself to the immobility of society, either because of apathy or self-interest. You've given up on ever trying to improve things, trying to better the world. You don't care to bring truth to power. You don't care to hold the elite accountable. You just want things to stay more or less the same. Because in your world, everything is more or less okay. No wars, no racism, nothing. You might deep down know that your experience isn't universal, but you hide yourself from this fact because acknowledging it would force you to do some pretty painful retrospection. Retrospection that would probably make you feel pretty guilty about some things. And you'd rather just avoid all that, so you isolate yourself in a bubble of pseudo-stoicism where everyone else is at fault and you're the hero. Everyone else is coming to attack your lifestyle. Because comedy is more than just jokes. It's about humanity. Because comedy is something completely unique to humans, yet universal among them. Every culture, from the uncontacted tribes of the Amazon to the first world hyper-industrialist nations, each of them has one thing in common. We all laugh. It's an explicitly human thing to search for laughter, and for the most part, reactionary politics is antithetical to humanity in general. Because in a way, right-wing politics is a call back to a primal state in which it was kill or be killed. If it benefits you, damn the consequences to others, because it's a dog-eat-dog world. But that's not how it has to be. The existence of comedy is proof that we don't need to retreat to our primal instincts of animalistic greed, that we have evolved and developed values far beyond the food chain. So when right-wing ideologies are so antithetical to everything we know comedy to be, can there be right-wing comedians? I personally don't think so, because it's not only anti-human, it's anti-life. And a lot of times, comedy is really all some people got left.